Now, everything's connected, on a global level. You kind of look at it like a spider web if you wanted to. I think it would be the best analogy. And it's amazing how a conflict on the other side of the world, against Russia is having direct effect on criminal groups right below the United States. So they send weapons to the other side of the world and they basically get sent back basically to where they came from just to be sold at a premium. And of course, there's lots of people in Ukraine who are trying to make money as well as win the war against Russia. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, is money, right? Now, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so in Super Chat or the link to buy me a coffee as well. Smash on that like button. Let me know down below if you think these weapons could eventually be used against even the United States or, of course, the Mexican government. Of course, that wasn't their original intention, but that's the way this game's played. Now, we gotta remember lots of very expensive weapon packages, things like the Javelin, which of course is an anti-tank rocket, and it's actually, instead of striking straight up, it goes up and strikes down from the top into the top where the crew is and where there's less armor usually. So it's kind of revolutionary in that aspect, and that's one of the weapon systems that's been reported to have been resold many times over. And this is kind of like arms exposition for a lot of these criminal groups and giving them a chance to get their hands on American weapons that they haven't had a chance since, operations like Fast and Furious, which of course was the government's failed operation to supposedly let guns into Mexico so they could trace where they go, but they lost track of them. That's the shortened version of what went wrong there. Now, with these weapons being acquired by these groups, of course, it increases the danger for authorities that are trying to arrest and take them down. And we all know they have plenty of RPGs and things like that. You can look at, Mencho using it against helicopters when they tried to detain him not too long ago at all, actually. And it's been several times they tried, let me state that as well. But point is, helicopters are already being knocked down, and RPGs are extremely inaccurate. They're kind of like old school, if you want to look at it like that. They're not a smart weapon, and they're only good for several hundred meters, right? But these weapon systems that they're able to get their hands on are a complete game changer as far as range and power and danger for anybody. So that's what we have to remember. It's almost like everything we brought over into Afghanistan when you see the Taliban armed now with M16s and night vision. It's insane, but there's always consequences for us trying to help someone or whatever we do. And I'm not against anything. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say is things are a lot more complicated than they seem. And sometimes the consequences is like a butterfly effect. We don't see what it is in the long run, but it could come back to bite us 10 years down the road, 10 years down the way. Just like, with the missiles, even we sold to Afghanistan, the Stinger systems and things like that to knock down planes that later we ended up having to buy back. And when I'm saying we, I'm saying the United States people at a very high price. They were bought back from the same people we'd given them to originally to use against the Russians. Now, as far as will these groups try to acquire even heavier and bigger things than, I'm talking about shoulder-fired missiles, bigger things, bigger weapon packages, I don't really think so much, because to a large extent it just brings a lot more government attention onto them, and they're not really in a place to have a stationary base or anything and be able to fight it like that, because we all know the Mexican government, the American government will just destroy it or whatever they do. It's kind of like a low-key thing under the ground, and they can only have weapon systems that are so big and so portable and so dangerous, if you want to look at it like that, before bringing even more government attention than they're of course trying to attract. And that's even for groups like Menchos. They only need things that are so big. The largest target they're ever going to go against ever would be a helicopter. It's not like they're going to go up against tanks or anything like that. They don't even have tanks here as far as the military in Mexico, the way most of the world thinks of tanks, right? And the fact that these weapons are being given to these people, and they're using the same weapons now, the narcos in lots of cases. Now they're getting their hands on a lot of things from Ukraine. that American soldiers are using in the field. If you guys see that, they have the same kit. They have the Knox. They have the Javelin. They have their shoulder fired missile, the RPG. They have everything else that they can get their hands on that any other group can in the world now. And for a long time, it wasn't like that. A lot of the weapons were coming basically from the United States, but they were being legally bought. So they were more civilian grade weapons. And the last time a big release of these has been since like when the Soviet Union broke up, or during the Contras as well in Central America. There's been several times when conflicts or the falling of governments has opened up huge amounts of weapons onto the market. But in recent history, Ukraine is the big boy, and the actual conflict, the longer it goes on, of course, the more weapons that are going to be released into hands. And if you got to remember, groups like organized crime in Mexico are running it. That means any group anywhere in the world is also getting their hands on a lot of these weapons if they have the cash in hand. That's money talks, bullshit walks, especially in the gun game. And I know I personally went to prison for it, so I can vouch on that one. Now, to get them actually from Ukraine over to here, it's interesting to think things are being sent from one side of the ocean as far as from here over to Europe and other places in the world, but they're also coming back into Mexico in the form of weapons, in the form of precursor chemicals from China. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that side of the operation, or the things coming back in, which are just as valuable sometimes as the things leaving. It's these precursor chemicals are huge. A lot of people have made their fortunes just on a couple of shipments of them. The potential for making a killing or a high profit margin is ridiculous, and when it comes to actually cooking these substances, especially if you're taking charge of the whole process from the cooking to the shipping to the selling, that's where the big money is. You monopolize the whole process, right? And it's the same with the gun game. A lot of these guns are being resold, but sometimes the actual groups themselves will send representatives to places like Ukraine to acquire these weapons and send them directly back to them, so they don't have to, buy it 2 or 3 times resold down the chain, paying 200-300 times or 2 or 3 times what they were originally paid. And when they send these people for make these big arms deals, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars easily sometimes, and especially due to the actual advanced weapon systems we're talking about here in Ukraine and stuff. These weapon systems are a lot more expensive than anything they've ever previously bought, but they're also more effective, so they're getting their bang for their buck. And I wonder how long it's going to be before we actually see a confirmed use of a javelin in Mexico or any other very common weapon system being used and sold to Ukraine. I really do feel it's a matter of time. Of course, they're going to keep it on the down low, the Mexican government included, but due to the age we're in, the cell phones, everyone has one, and people film all the time, even when they're in shootouts and this and that. I guarantee it's only a matter of time before we see it. And I can also see these weapons kind of being used as trophy kind of weapons, just like the Russian soldiers who were grabbing them in Ukraine. Sometimes when they capture them, they'd be taking the javelin home, as a trophy weapon, because it's technology they don't have access to, and it's not very common. And it's kind of impressive to be able to show off, I think, to other soldiers and stuff like that. That's why they want to keep it, or they might even just go hang it on their damn wall. Who knows? Either way, the amount of death that is being sold wholesale when it comes to this, because at the end of the day, the small arms too that are being sold is what kills more people than anything. The AK-47s, all that, the 7.62 by 39s tear things apart. We're talking millions and millions and millions, and not in the conflict in Ukraine. That's a big conflict in itself. But I'm talking about worldwide in arms sales from all these weapons being sold everywhere, and it's only second to the actual drug trade. That's the only thing that outsteps arms. And there's lots of nefarious groups and players involved in it, sometimes even more nefarious than you can see the groups here in Mexico. Arms trafficking is a whole nother shebang. And hopefully this conflict in Ukraine is resolved soon. I don't really think it's going to happen, personally, but we can always hope for the best, right? So smash on that like button, leave a comment down below. If you didn't do so already, shame on you. Just playing. Have a good one, everybody. Much love.